Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Well, we're nearing the end of September, so I guess the Green Day fans can wake up now and to our quiet quitting norm. I thought I would make some comments on things that I've seen in regards to quiet quitting in recent times and how I feel about them. Well, I used to work for Bloomberg, the news organization, and I held high regards for Michael Bloomberg. And I'm a little bit disappointed to see Mike write something about quiet quitting. He had mentioned that people need to return to the office because in the years since remote work, the number of people playing golf has increased exponentially. Now, what I don't understand is what that has anything to do with work, right? So you can play golf and be a really good employee at the same time, right? In fact, I'm willing to bet Mike Bloomberg himself plays plenty of golf or whatever hobby he likes, right? Maybe it's not golf. In fact, I'm going to bet that Mike Bloomberg probably plays a sport different than golf. That's why he's picking on it, right? If he played golf, he would probably pick on how busy baseball fields are, right? That's my guess. Because people like to, I'm going to get to that in a moment, but people like to pick on how other people enjoy life, right? There's a lot of discussion about the possibility of a 3 day weekend every week, right? So we just had Labor Day and people wish for that to be every week. I got to point out something. This whole debate about, well, one thing I noticed one company is quote unquote trying a 3 day weekend every week. They're going to have this trial period of some number of months, maybe it's a year. I don't remember the details. But I guarantee that thing is going to fail. Why? Because if you have 3 day weekends every week for 2 months and you're not sure if they're going to continue after the 2 months, what's going to happen? You're not going to plan activities for that third day because you don't know how it's going to go, right? You're certainly not going to sign up to take courses on something during that day of the week. You're certainly not going to commit to seeing various friends. You're not going to book an airline ticket 5 months down the road, not knowing if you're going to get that day off, right? And I think there's a ulterior motive for that trial. I think the employer actually wants it to fail. I really do. It makes about as much sense as another trial that drives me crazy is some people believe we should have a universal basic income, right? And there's a lot of programs that want to try it. I mean, do it or don't. Don't try it. The problem with try is that nobody can rely on it. It's gonna look very different than what you would actually. Not that I would support the universal basic income, but having a trial period of it is going to be a very different concept than actually doing it, right? Um, it reminds me of how a lot of people handle their eating habits. They go on a diet when in reality they need to change their ways, right? And it kind of reminds me of that. But about the weekend, if you want a 3 day weekend, you don't have to cut your work, right? You can work 5 days and then take a 3 day weekend, right? I think that would appease a lot of people a lot better because you're not sacrificing work in that way, right? I think a lot of employers could get behind it. It's that everybody would have to kind of go along with it together, right? If your workplace happens in isolation with the outside world, I suppose you could try or don't try it, do it. Have a 5 day work week and then take a 3 day weekend every week. Right? I really encourage you to think about that. Unfortunately, I don't see that idea being thrown around. I haven't. The other thing I want, this one's going to be a lot harder to conceptualize, but one of the biggest benefits of remote work, and especially when we were locked down, was we had um, see, one of the problems with scheduled work at the office is that if you have to see somebody at 9 to 10, let's say, it's really difficult to do anything at 8 o'clock, 8:30. You're kind of worried about do I have enough time to finish the task, right? It puts a big constraint. A meeting that might last 1 or 2 hours really puts a constraint across multiple hours, right? And so I'm thinking we ought to have some kind of a clockless society where people get work done, but don't worry too much about the clock, right? This might work better if you're doing something that's asynchronous, right? If you're, I can't, I'm trying to think, right? There are a lot of tasks that don't really have to happen at a certain time. The other possibility is if you own a large enough organization, let's say you own a restaurant, right? And let's suppose it's open some number of hours. I would imagine there's some leeway for hours for employee work schedules to float a little bit, right? After all, there's plenty of people. Let's say it's a big enough restaurant, right? Imagine it's a. I'm trying to think. I go to a board game meetup every Friday that's held in an IHOP, and there might be 8 or 9 people working there at any given moment in time. The schedules don't have to be technically fixed, right? If people show up 10, 20 minutes early or late, I don't see a problem with that. But the benefit is that people don't have to keep their eyes glued on the time, right? So a floating clockless schedule, I don't know if that made any sense to you guys, but I would so much love to have a clockless society. I mean, the closest thing I can think of to a clockless society was well, when I'm doing my art projects, right? There's no telling what time I have to pour these things. Although the art show definitely does have a clock, but even that is pretty flexible, right? The art show usually happens over a 6 8 hour day, and I don't have to be there the whole time, right? So I noticed that I waste a lot of time trying to be on time. That's the point I'm trying to make, right? It costs a lot of time to be on time. I don't know if that made sense to you guys. But another thing I would bring up is that here in the United States, people are very judgy, right? What you do in your personal lives. And so, for example, we talk about these family benefits. What a family benefit really is the workplace putting a constraint on how you live your family life, right? It really is, right? Some people don't have family life the same way as other people, right? Every time I see a workplace benefit, I think that's another way the workplace is controlling us, right? So, for example, there was this software giant. I can't remember who they are, but they're in Denver, and they want to give every employee, I think it was about $6,000 to take a vacation once a year. Now, it sounds great, right? I think they should just pay every employee 6,000 if that's their goal, right? Don't tie it to going on vacation, right? What's to say that you don't have an employee who vacations by working hard, right? What's to say that you don't have an employee who vacations in a different way that might not be acceptable to the company, right? I think let me look up that policy. It was a software giant in Denver. I'm trying to look it up. Full contact pays you to Denver's full contact pays you to take vacation. I don't think I could screen share here on YouTube, but let's see what they say. I have a big problem with that policy because not everybody vacations differently, the same way. I don't know if they force you to have to fly somewhere, or I used to have a big fear of flying. I would probably drive on my vacation, but the biggest workplace policy I can think of that would be useful is just leave your employees fucking alone, right? Any sort of policy people don't live their lives the same way, right? Now, another thing that I wish would become policy is that I've worked at places that didn't allow you to eat at the desk, right? I worked at a tutoring center, and right now I don't know if it's a policy that we shouldn't eat in the classroom. I wish it were more acceptable to eat, as long as you don't bother other people, right? If you can keep your food tidy, if you can, if somebody has an allergy and asks you not to bring something, you bring something else, right? As long as you can do that, I don't see why we should ban people from eating at various places. Now, here's why that's an important policy. Some people have eating disorders, right? And uh, let's say you're recovering from chemotherapy, you don't have much of an appetite, and you really need to leverage that little bit of appetite that you can get every here and there, right? I was reading about a policy, a company that literally asked its colleagues to report somebody who violates, not eating at their desk. I have a big problem with that. If you can eat in a way that doesn't bother other people, be my guest. And the reason for that is, some people really need to leverage. For me, I used to have a binge eating problem. And I operate best if I eat when my body actually wants it, right? And unfortunately, at a lot of workplaces, I haven't been able to do that. I think I could manage my eating a heck of a lot better. I think it, I personally think, but this is just my opinion. Anytime you ban somebody from eating at their desk, especially if there's no good reason to, right? People just need to be more malleable to how people operate. I really think that's a violation of HIPAA issues, right? For example, I was also reading another policy. This company used to have. Let's imagine you work for a company that requires you to travel, right? And so some companies will pay you per diem for your meals, but this company discovered that a lot of employees were eating cheaply and then pocketing the per diem money. So now they require you to turn in your receipts. I think that's a serious violation of HIPAA. Let me tell you why. For some people, what they eat is almost as important as what they pick up from the pharmacy. I know it sounds like an exaggeration here in the United States, but it literally I see those two as almost being the same thing. Would you ask your employees to turn in their receipts from the pharmacy to you rather than to their insurance company? Oh, you need to review it before they turn it into their insurance company. Would you do that? Right? I think most people would have a serious problem with that kind of policy. Well, why food then? Food is medicine. Just throwing that out there. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.